Hello, hello. Welcome to day 4 of Rhythm Over Intensity. Today's question is, where am I still performing instead of expressing? The first thing that comes to mind, as a very bright example, is my anger. When it comes to expressing my anger, I do notice at times I falter, especially when it comes to certain people, either that be an ex or my mom. I notice I, in the moment, downplay the impact the situation might have had on me, or I purposefully minimize my frustration, my anger, my disappointment. I do understand it comes from a place of wanting to protect the other person, because I do think it is quite disappointing at times when we've upset someone. And I know with sadness I can be quite all right expressing it, but specifically when it comes to this anger, the sense of, hey, I've been wronged, I've been hurt, and I want to express that, I do notice I downplay it. And I realize in no small part it is because I'm scared of my own anger. So I know I get quite overwhelmed by it, where first off, I'll suppress it, I'll minimize it during situations, but then I do that on a consistent enough basis where then it kind of boils over in moments where it might not nearly be as related to it. Where I'll have this pent up frustration that I didn't voice, that I didn't express, and it boils over to the point that I can't control it, and I can say things or do things that I don't think I would had I actually taken the time to be really present with my anger. So, from that place of not knowing how to sit with that middle range, that comes as low range, I can kind of express my anger frustration, but when it passes a certain threshold, I do notice I can control it, but I don't validate it. I don't accept it. I'm not particularly present with it. In fact, looking back in the last few weeks with a few situations that happened, I definitely don't realize the impact some things might have on me. In a positive sense, plenty of situations I can really accept it, but when it comes to being hurt or going through a situation that was quite negatively impactful, I do not realize the extent to which it impacts me. And it is something I've been aware of. I've worked with it in the past, but I can't say it's been a consistent and present enough thing. And as I talk about this, as I'm voicing this right now, I do notice this discomfort come up where it's like, I don't want to be angry with people. I want to live in a perfect, beautiful, just world where everyone is nice to me. And sure, sometimes I'm sad and I can sit with grief. I've really learned to sit with grief and be present with it on big levels of the feeling. But when I think about anger, I do notice I get taken by it quite easily and quite quickly when it starts to bubble over. And as I ponder now, anger for us is an important emotion. It is a driver. It can be a driver, a very healthy driver. Whenever injustice is present, we need anger. We don't need just to be sad about something. We need that fuel, that fire to go and create active change. And I think due to my not being particularly present with my anger, not having the skills or experience to really learn to be in it without it taking me away, I do think that has, in no small way, actually impacted where I am in my life, in a sense of how far along I am with certain things. I'm not completely aware of that entirely. It's kind of coming through now, and I'm realizing, oh, wow, actually, I really do perform a nice girl whenever I'm angry. I'm wanting to minimize my anger in no small part because I've been taught not to be angry, because women are taught not to be angry, that it's not a good look, and that you need to be nice and kind to people. But the reality is that anger is what protects us as well. In a situation when someone's trying to fuck you over or do anything, that anger needs to be present. But I do notice this kind of like childlike anger comes through in me in those situations where I get justifiably angry, but it becomes this like almost like overwhelming child. Like I just want to like stomp my feet and get angry. But the reality is, in adult life, be that in a professional environment or a personal environment, that kind of anger, it's not beneficial. I think it's important to have people around you with whom you can kind of be angry like that and like a stompy child. But there also comes that element that for me, I need to be aware of that. I can allow myself to be stompy and angry and frustrated, but as long as it's not directed at another person. But when it comes to actually expressing my anger to others in a way that they've impacted and this anger is present is a response to something they have done, I do downplay it. And I notice it's because I start to minimize my needs. I start to think that I'm just being emotional. I'm just being a bit too angry, and this is unreasonable. And so I downplay that. But then it collects and it boils over. And in the moment when it does, I do see red. I'm not particularly in control or grounded in it. And as I'm thinking about it now, I do notice a bit of grief coming up because it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, like I've been taught to be this way. Another part of unlearning. The tension arises within me whenever anger is present. So as I'm kind of thinking now and as I'm observing and reflecting on the last few weeks where my anger has boiled over, and fortunately, nothing bad happened, but that's thanks to being around the right people, and there were no repercussions that have had a big impact, but rather I've been mentored and guided through the situation. And perhaps I feel scared of sitting with that anger, in part because I've really worked to be more loving towards myself and kind. And I guess I don't know much about being angry at myself in a healthy way. How do then I navigate that disappointment, that anger that I've caused myself? That then does reflect on how I interact with people, where I'll consistently minimize my needs and I'll be worried about sending myself in not the best of productive places, that I do downplay it. And the lesson I'm thinking of now, and I know this is an edge, is can I be with my anger? Can I explore it? Can I be present and open to it versus seeing it as something that is a reflection of my worth? Something I did with a previous somatic experiencing therapist was noticing my anger, but bringing it into my body, but starting it from just that little one, like 0.5%, 1%, 2%, and then envisioning it as a leaf, as the stem of a leaf, as you would in a nervous system. So instead of that anger maybe shooting up and going outward, I could start to redirect it, not to a place of expressing it in that bubbling over, overwhelming way, but through a calmer part of my nervous system where I remain grounded in it and I can learn to articulate my anger in a more mature and present way versus just allowing it to boil over and for all these things that I am angry about somewhere in my body to come up and paint a different story, a more intense story of the thing I'm actually upset about. I notice I am uncomfortable voicing that. I notice I really don't want to be angry. On one hand, I really like things like martial arts and heavy lifting and things that are maybe like I would associate with anger and the movement and expression of it. But when I think about sincerely being with my anger, sincerely just sitting there and allowing myself to feel it, but to also explore not just the energetic charge of it, but the story, the context, the embodiment of that anger in a healthy, grounded way. When I think of that, I want to hide a little bit because I don't want to be angry. But also, that's not the reality of the world we live in. Anger, especially at this time, is needed. It is a prerequisite to the change we will be and are moving towards. To be healthily angry is to recognize that something is out of place. There is injustice. And the perfect example that comes to mind is Kali. Kali is a goddess of rage and destruction. But she does so out of love to destroy and remove anything that is out of the frequency of love. So if I learn to sit with this anger, I want to ask myself, how would it benefit my life? How would taking the time to be with my anger, to honor it as a sacred expression of humanity, how would it positively impact my life? What comes to mind straight away is I think I would restore more integrity within myself. I would notice things that are out of resonance, and I think would have a more direct approach to shifting them back into resonance versus kind of just thinking, oh, it's all right. It's like, it's good enough. But the reality is, if I stay in that good enough, then I'm living a half life. I am performing, I am spending that energy, which doesn't just come from one place, it starts to gather from other places. So you spend the energy performing, whereas expressing would be a much more cost efficient way that would then leave more time and energy for me to build the things I want to build, to be more authentic, to be more alive. So the uncomfortable question I'm noticing now, not forcing, but definitely noticing and will be implementing, is hey, sit with your anger, get to know it, get to learn to listen. How does it sound? What does it feel like in your somatic sense? What thoughts come to mind? What patterns might come up? I noticed, and this is very uncomfortable to voice, like whenever I'm angry about something and I've not resolved it, I start to fight people in my head. Like, not verbally as well, but more than anything, I start to imagine fights. And I start to imagine these like dangerous situations. I come out as the hero, which is a bit silly. Like, I don't think realistically I would do any of the things I think about in those situations, be that they are unsafe or they are unnecessary. But then, as I've observed, that pattern comes up, that way of thinking comes up when there's a sense of injustice within myself, an unmet need, or I've been hurt, and I need to stand up for myself, both internally and externally. And I want to come to a place of where I'm able to be absolutely fucking livid while not losing my cool. To have that anger be like a steady stream instead of this big explosion. And for me to remain grounded and navigate the situation with calm, with maturity, and actually maybe curiosity and compassion. Because anger for me eclipses other things. But what would happen if I were to be able to remain in my anger while also bringing in other parts of me to support that at times intense energy? I do think it would allow a more true path in my life to emerge. As I have these realizations in this session of pondering, it is something that has become quite apparent I need to spend time being with and really exploring, actually. Because where I'm going in life, I do at times feel disappointed, and there's validity in not being hard on yourself, but something tells me that it isn't just the external world impacting me. Plenty of it is how I view the world. And if I am then not actively having the audacity to ask for things I want, which then might include that energy of anger or that sister energy of just directness, of courage in asking for what it is I want from myself, from the people around me, from the universe, I think it would put me on a more genuine path and on a more loving path. Because if we perform over expressing, that takes energy away from us, and we end up with resentment. Small or big, it just festers and in small ways just impacts how we move through the world. And I know I don't want to be moving through the world with resentment. I don't want to be playing the victim. So that means I need to be now present with that anger and genuinely really explore it and begin to mature into it and create stable connections with other emotions at the same time, to interconnect them to become more whole. So yeah, stay tuned for that. That was the video. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.